Women have assumed more responsibilities in the house and with childcare. The division of labor was natural and justifiable in history when the husband was usually the main breadwinner in the family. In contemporary society, it has become an unreasonable arrangement as working women put similar efforts into jobs that bring home similar levels of income as men, while in the role of wife they are still expected to take a greater share in homemaking and childbearing than the husband. The particular. Even when the wife makes more than her husband and he decides to help her out around the house, his household duties seem to be lighter than the wife's. For example, he'll clean the table, but she'll wash the dishes and cook the food. He'll work on the yard every so often, but she'll constantly go out and buy the family essentials like shoes and clothes. He'll search up school information, but she's the one who checks homework, attends school affairs, and reads bedtime stories. The discriminator. There are six types of discrimination between a husband and wife. The first two is voluntary versus involuntary. Voluntary discrimination is when one spouse is more capable, conscientious, or energetic than the other and hence voluntarily takes a greater share of family labor from time to time. Involuntary discrimination is when one spouse fails to partake of a particular housekeeping job or general family responsibility that has to be addressed as part of everyday life. Chronic versus situational discrimination. Chronic discrimination persists in the family when one voluntarily or involuntarily does more housekeeping and other family maintenance work because one spouse is always lazy, often sick, or habitually elusive. Situational discrimination takes place now and then in a family when one suddenly finds a reason to go away, leaving an unfinished or yet to do piece of housework to one spouse. Conventional versus fashionable discrimination. Conventional discrimination is established tradition, culture, or custom, while fashionable discrimination comes and goes along with trendy social fashions and vogues.
So I'm going to be doing the sections for the victim, the compromise, and the universal. The victim. Alibaba's wife is a victim of unequal household labor. Physically, Alibaba's wife is cooking meals, washing dishes, and ironing clothes. At a long term, this labor can lead to health conditions on hands and body joints, such as arthritis, skin dryness, and roughness. Professionally, Alibaba's wife has to give up many career opportunities and success. No professional expansion and growth, which includes great amount of time placed on her family. As wives, many women no longer strive for career achievements. Women who have a full-time job and are wives tend to have a shorter life and age faster. Beauty, youth, and professional success are sacrificed. The compromise. Alibaba's wife's compromise. Alibaba's wife takes no compromise without any choice. Forced by socially constructed ideas, women take care of chores without any option. Alibaba's wife accepts those culturally established views about men. Alibaba's compromise, on the other hand, only men's compromise is to love his family. While women do chores, a good husband helps out. Remember and also remembers what his wife does for him and his family. The universal. Rights between men and women. Women hold less power while performing more labor than men. Less upward mobility for women despite legislation favoring them. Women are considered by housekeepers, caretakers, and sympathizers of their own husband. Husbands do witness inequality and tend to not contribute, but instead use it as an advantage for themselves. For a long time from now, still stands for women to reach complete equality among society.
Hey everyone, my name is Sevak Chilingayan and I'm assigned on Textbook 2, Chapter 3, Situation Number 2, Husband and Wife Relation Within Our Society. Here in Situation 2, structure of the family is divided into three groups: modern families, traditional families, and the postmodern families. Modern families are those where both husband and wife work and share the house responsibilities. Traditional families are those where husband is the only working person and the wife does the housework. Postmodern families are those where the husband takes care of the children and house responsibilities while his wife is working. In particular, Daniel, who is the Alibaba's friend, has problems in his house, and its problems are associated with his wife Jane. Daniel and Jane have the two children in common. Daniel is a hard-working man who works many hours overtime, constantly looking for the job. He also lives in a fear that one day he might lose his job and his family might not able to survive, and almost busy all the time in order to keep her family together and functional. On the other hand, Joan does not work, and hardly she worked in her entire life. Hardly does the house job, demanding on her sexual gratifications, and she also has addictive habit of the shopping by leaving credit debts for her husband. In the discriminator part of the textbook, John seems to be the discriminator. Their children and all house needs are mainly Daniel's responsibilities. Since husband takes care of the financial part of the house, there could be the agreement between wife and husband where wife can keep the house clean, provide a comfort, makes the safe place for her husband where he can feel really good after the work. However, instead, she does not work. She is disorganized, makes uncultured demands, and does all unnecessary shopping. She creates an environment where Daniel becomes a stressful person under those pressures. Also, she is not supporting her husband and does not even take his perspective or look at the things on her husband's views. She accuses the Daniel all the time by bringing examples from her friend's husband, like such a person gets promotions, such a person brings the big portion of the money to the house, and she always accuses the Daniel about not being sufficient enough. Also, she does not pay attention to the Daniel and threatens to seek a boyfriend if Daniel does not satisfy her uncultured sexual demands. So this was the three parts of the situation 2, particular and the discrimination. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Angel Cisneros, and I am doing my part on Textbook 2, Chapter 3, on Situation 2, the victim, the compromise, and the universal. Situation 2, the victim. Daniel is the victim in his relationship with June. He has no choice but to work since June doesn't have a job. He works hard in order to get a promotion and works overtime in order to increase the amount on his paycheck, while working in fear to prevent losing his job. Even though Daniel understands he has responsibilities as a father and a husband, he sometimes feels like he is being used by June for her shopping habits, curbing overall family spending, and practicing a frugal lifestyle in tune to their economic situation. When it comes to housework, Daniel does most of it. Daniel does not have much free time when he is home. However, when he is home, June utilizes him immediately. After work, June asks him to check the children's homework, wash laundry, or make the table for dinner. She leaves a messy house for Daniel when she knows he will be home for a few hours or the weekend. Daniel's release from work is his hard labor at home. His hard labor at home is June's freedom from the house. Work, stress, and fear take a toll on Daniel. In his 40s, he already experiences frequent lack of desire for sex and occasional erectile dysfunction. He wishes June wouldn't so bluntly use him as a sex machine, but would maintain and cultivate a joint interest in sex and intimacy for a lifetime of love and marriage. The compromise. Although Daniel and June are committed to their marriage, they sometimes wish they had a spouse that makes more money or takes care of the family. June feels like she has given up a lot. With her shopping habits, she struggles with not buying items that she wants. She purchases items with discounts or smart savings coupons and returns merchandise when she realizes she can live without it. When she sees Daniel wrestling with bills, she feels guilty and offers comfort. When it comes to housework, June chooses not to use a cleaning service, cook home meals, take the children to and from school, and manage family affairs with economically sensible measures. June understands that Daniel works hard, deals with stress, and experiences fatigue. But when it comes to sex, only she knows that she has, on many times and occasions, made serious efforts to hold back, divert, or conceal her desires for intimacy. Daniel has June's perspective in mind. June is energetic, life-loving, and intelligent, and it is not easy for her to stay home. If June had proper training and opportunities, she could have a successful career. She is not perfect in keeping everything in shape as a homemaker, but she shouldn't have to be at home imprisoned all the time like a cleaning lady, nanny, cook, or an all-way housekeeper. She deserves time to be out shopping, being with friends, or relaxing in beauty salons. The question is not about whether June should do all those womanly things, but about how much Daniel as a husband makes those things available to his wife. At the same time, he can only thank his wife for having such a lively sexual interest in him. Daniel knows that to a large degree it is June, her active interest and refreshing energy that keeps him what he should be, a husband, father, and a man in life. The universal. The give and take between husband and wife cannot be measured, calculated, or equaled. There are families where contributions or sacrifices by one spouse are out of his or her due proportion that he or she may be considered sympathized by the community of neighbors, workmates, relatives, and friends as an unfortunate victim of relationship, circumstance, or fate. A non-working spouse who spends out of necessity the other person's income, who doesn't perform the job of a housemaker, and does not have any other choices other than sex to channel the idleness of unemployment and the boredom or tiredness of housekeeping routines, can easily be singled out as to blame. The working spouse is praised as a noble person of sacrifice because he or she has to triumph in the world of competition, be in charge of the financial responsibility of his or her family, and serve as a de facto pillar of support and stability in the family. The stress from work, the tiredness they show at the dinner table, and the sexual ineptitude they suffer in bed can all be counted as specifics as their overall victimization experience in the marital or familial relationship. Feelings of discrimination or victimization can translate into arguments, fights, and other forms of tension between husband and wife. However, negotiation, compromise, and understanding gain force and currency, keeping many families intact despite some of their common and essential flaws, such as emotional incompatibility and economic inequality between each other. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Sienna Corona Ramos, and today I'll be discussing Situation 3 and Situations 3, Particular, Discriminator, and Victim. Situation 3 discusses the example of an immigrant coming to America to give themselves a better life and an opportunity for a better life. Once that person is able to establish themselves in America, they can bring their family over to experience the same opportunities they did when they first came. The particular. A man named Ali Baba meets Jung, who he started sharing an office together with, and discovers Jung is from a different country, who's working on his PhD for discipline of science while working as a research assistant. During his second semester, Jung decided to petition his school for documents so he can bring his wife over to the United States. He had to do a lot of hard work to receive the correct paperwork and signature so he could finally bring his wife through a visa obtained through the U.S. Embassy in his home country. He really had to work hard to save his money, but then his wish finally came true, and once his wife came, he ended up showing her off to his friends and then started helping her set up her life in America. After a year, she started to embrace the opportunity of being a university student and becoming a research associate full-time. Soon, Jung's wife was able to attend conferences with her boss in her new job and ended up moving out on her own, but this caused problems between her and her husband. Eventually, her and Jung end up divorcing. This left a major emotional scar on Jung because he felt his life was starting to fall apart. Later on, he found out his ex-wife ended up having a better job than him and was married to her former boss, and they were expected to have a child soon. The discriminator. Ali Baba believes the wife was a discrimination opportunist. He felt Jung's wife used him to bring her to the US, and when she found somebody better, she left him. She used him in 3 dimensions. The first dimension is financially. The money that was used to obtain her passport and visa came from the work Jung put in and money he made while working in America. She started living off of him when she was trying to go to school and look for work because she was Jung's wife and the husbands are supposed to provide for their wives without offering the help. And when she was presented the opportunity to help her husband, she didn't. The second dimension was time and effort. He spent hours searching for documents his wife needed to come to America. He stopped and rescheduled important appointments he had so he could achieve his goal, bring his wife to America, which caused a lot of friction with his school studies and certain employees he had to deal with. And then after the divorce, Jung's ex-wife really checked on him to make sure he was okay. And finally, emotionally is the final and last dimension. While with Jung, she never said any encouraging or thankful words to Jung for what he did to bring her to America. Never said how much she loved or missed Jung while she was back in their home country. The only time his ex-wife spoke to him dearly was when she was telling him that she needed to move out so she can be closer to her job and school. And then when she separated from Jung, she told him to leave her alone because he was not good enough for her in her eyes. The victim. Jung ended up sharing his story with his friends to show how victimized he felt by his ex-wife and how he abandoned he felt and how he felt he was just used for his money by somebody who he loved very deeply. It took a long time for him to recover. He felt a lot of heartache and sadness, and it affected him very deeply. His education and career goals were greatly affected during his separation. He had trouble focusing on his work, so trying to pursue the opportunities he worked so hard to perceive, they didn't really go the way he thought it would. He started to contemplate whether or not he should quit school and go back to a home country, but eventually he decided to stay and started turning back normal slowly. However, he wasn't able to multitask like he used to and lost some skills and some of his professional edge, which led his professional career to fly out the window. Now he had to rethink his life because all he ever thought of was how he wanted to make his ex-wife happy and have a good profession and family with her. The divorce left him with a feeling of emptiness and sadness and pain. He changed his views on women and became very shy towards them, and sometimes this led him to avoid people, mainly women, because of the trauma he went through with his ex-wife. And he also had to learn that you have to be careful about who you trust because the world can be a cruel place. Maybe if he was more easygoing, his marriage may not have deteriorated and he could probably still be married to his ex-wife, fulfilling the dreams that he wanted. Either way, he had gone through victimization because of believing and trusting the love he had for his wife, even though she didn't show it in return.
Hello, my name is Hector Coronel, and today I'll be discussing situations 3, the compromise, and the universal. First, I'll be defining what the compromise is, then I'll proceed to giving both Jung's compromise and his ex-wife's compromise regarding the situation. Then I'll finish off with the universal regarding this particular situation. The compromise represents both sides as their respective perspectives to see how the situation through problematic sustains itself as part of a social equilibrium or as an episode of everyday life continuum. Jung's compromise. Jung eventually forgives his former wife and went on with his own life. Jung never demanded his wife return all the money he spent on her, from application of travel, documents, purchases of air and other transportation tickets, and preparation of job and school materials to maintain an everyday life between their reunion and separation. Jung didn't make any suggestions that his wife explicitly or implicitly compensate him for all the time and emotion he had unselfishly invested in her so that she could come to the United States and find a professional career and private life she perceived to be good for herself. Jung never bothered for his former wife, even when he still struggled financially in graduate school and when she already lived in comfort and affluence. Jung's ex-wife compromised. Jung's wife never said any negative words about Jung. In her mind, Jung is a gentleman of kindness. She forever is grateful for what Jung did for her career and her life. Although she had not done anything in actuality, she sincerely wishes that she could somehow pay back Jung. The universal attempts to uncover and learn from the case or situation something general or significant, sociologically or otherwise. It is common that someone follows a person or a close relationship toward a widely known or generally perceived destination of a professional success, material affluence, and secure happiness. It is also not uncommon that the beneficiary or such a following would later change his or her attitude or position, walking away from, turning against, or even becoming a bitter enemy of the original benefactor. The pair roles in question could range from husband-wife in marriage, master-apprentice, in craftsmanship and advisor student in academy, to patron prodigy across various arenas. The sense of discrimination or victimization felt by the benefactor in the case of his or her beneficiary's transgression or betrayal can be generally warranted by both fact and assumption. At the assumption level, it is taken for granted that wife submit to husband, apprentice to yield to master, student listen to advisor, and prodigy remain loyal to patron in their mutual relationships. As long as the latter is present, the former should exercise proper caution, restraint and respect in voicing opinions, assumptions, positions, forging new relations, or adventuring into new areas. As a matter of fact, many benefactors, out of their self-perceived obligations, may indeed invest heavily in their counterparts. For example, in the case of Jung, he did everything he could for his wife as a caring, loving, and a responsible husband without ever thinking that she would one day relieve him permanently. Although there is no lack of famous cases, totally animosity and bitterness from history or in the celebrity circle, compromise can always take place, keeping a now broken pair of least in good memory of their former close relationships.
Hi, my name is Lisa Cortez, and this is Situation 4 on Chapter 3. Sex not only divides men from women in general, but it also differentiates both sides of the sexual divide into privileged men versus disadvantaged women in particular. While it is common for an older man to take a younger woman as his wife, his mistress, or even a concubine, it is rare that an aged woman can ever secure a younger man or a junior man. The particular. Among Alabiba's community, there are a few couples with similar characteristics in their relationship of a man dating a younger woman. He gave out a few examples, but the most interesting one was couple D, as he named. And this couple was a couple named John and Sarah. John and Sarah married. They met in the workplace. He was at a much higher position than she was at the time. She was only 24, while John was actually in his mid-40s. After a few years of working together, they ended up getting married. But Sarah soon faced a challenge with this marriage. To begin with, she had to deal with John's children, which were from a previous marriage, and these children gave her a hard time, especially every time they would come back from the mom's side of the family. She considered these kids to be wickedly uncooperative. And by the time that she was actually able to control these children, she began to experience a new problem with John. At the time, John was suffering from an erectile dysfunction, which caused Sarah to suffer or to want and crave such an acute hunger for sex. The second problem that occurred after Sarah got married was that John was actually diagnosed with diabetes at some point, and he also had a heart condition that made him make changes in his lifestyle, such as exercising, dieting, and reducing the intense load or amount of work that he was actually doing. Coincidentally, around the same time, there was actually rumors at the workplace going around about new people entering the job with similar qualifications at a much lower pay. This actually made John become very concerned and want to work extra just so he can prove his worth to the family. Um, Sarah, by the time that John was already ready to almost retire or to be untimely terminated from his job, Sarah was just at her golden years. This was the perfect time for her to enter and begin work, but due to the fact that she had this aging, ailing husband who may soon be out of work or be ending his working life, Sarah will surely have to give up or pass many opportunities that might come her way.
My name is Eric Castillo, and I'm going to be talking about Chapter 3, Situations 5. Situations 5 basically talks about adults who are not often cared for by their children or family members in the industrial age. Alibaba, who runs a nursing home for senior citizens, and some of the characteristics she has observed within the elderly is that a lot of them have children and they miss seeing them, but hardly receive any visits. None of them are there whenever they're sick or whenever they need some type of medication. None of their care hasn't been paid for by their children. Most of them is paid for by their savings or with what they can afford. The elderly often express how they are forgotten by their loved ones. This section summarizes a relationship between parents and children. Have felt that their children have forgotten about them despite of their effort of investing a lot of time and money on their children. They don't seem to have the same relationship with their children that they used to have. Their children do not bother visiting them, and they do not bother being with their parents when they mostly need them.
Situation 5, the particular. In this section, we are introduced to Jean, his wife, and their 3 kids, John, Eileen, and George. As a couple, they tried their best to provide for the family. Jean commuted every day of his life, and his wife eventually had to quit her job of promise. When times were rough, they would let their kids eat first and would just have whatever was left over. Fortunately, they were able to put their kids through college, which was worth it because their kids obtained successful jobs. One was a doctor at a university hospital, the other was a partner of an established law firm, and the third child was a research scientist for a leading pharmaceutical company. During Jean's first 7 years of retirement with his wife, they lived a leisurely lifestyle. They babysat their grandkids and volunteered. Unfortunately, Jean's wife was diagnosed with stomach cancer. During this time, Jean was with her 24/7 and took care of her. Unfortunately, her children were seldom in the picture. When Jean's wife passed away, none of the kids were at her bedside for this. After his wife's death, Jean turned to a retirement home, Alibaba's nursing home. His health declined, and soon he was spending holidays and anniversaries alone. His children never visited as often as they used to, and he only saw his grandkids every now and then. The last visit with his kids involved his will and what their profits would be from it.
Hello, my name is Alejandro Corral, and I'm going to be going over Situation 4, the discriminator. The discriminator in this situation is John, a middle-aged man who is married to a young woman, Sarah, in a similar field of work. John has a more prestigious job as a high-level manager at his company, while his wife is a low-level new employee. John was a divorcee with 2 children, but Sarah was a young, eager woman with no real responsibilities besides her work. Sarah began to struggle after her marriage with John. John burdened Sarah by making her take care of his children, who do not acknowledge or respect her as their stepmother. They would resist any friendly approaches from Sarah and took years for them to cooperate with her. John's age also affected his and Sarah's sex life, which was almost non-existent after his eventual erectile dysfunction. Sarah is sexually deprived, while John as only cares about his sexual encounters in his younger life. He does not consider his wife's needs. John's age also affects Sarah due to all the medical problems that arise with older age. Sarah must support John with his medical intake, take care of him and the children, and also financially support the family as the only one that could really work. She must eventually choose her family over her job, which she worked so hard to climb the ranks. John did not ever physically or verbally abuse Sarah, but John did use the institution of marriage to keep his wife in control. She was put in a life as a nanny, a mother, and even a caretaker by becoming John's wife. He systematically controlled and ruined her life in a non-aggressive way. She was living a life of a grandmother, but was only really in her mid to late 20s.
Families in industrial societies don't tend to take care of their aging parents. Families don't think that health issues could arise later on, so that's the reason why they sometimes don't get better health plans, and they don't spend money more on like protecting their future for when they retire and stuff like that. A better health plan could have helped Jean's wife detect their cancer at an earlier age and could have gotten her better medical facilities and better surgeons. Jean's first child was actually a practicing physician, and he didn't offer his personal knowledge or to use his network to be able to get Jean's wife a better treatment for her cancer, or to like get her into better medical facilities. He didn't want to risk what he had developed in order for to help his mom. So he just basically just saw his mom slowly pass away and slowly get worsened because of her condition. When Jean's wife passed away, all he wanted was to stay in the house where they had grown old together, in the house that they got, where they made a family and stuff like that. But that didn't help in it, and all his 3 kids were financially capable of helping Jean stay in his house, of getting accommodations done so that their dad would be able to have their own nurse there to help him get around and stuff like that. Or even then they could have been able to bring him into their home and pay for their home to have stuff done to it to be able to keep Jean there. So Jean and his wife, ever since they were raising their kids, they would give whatever they want, whatever that it came to them retiring and stuff like that. Not that their kids would give them back money, but that their kids would look after them, take care of them and stuff like that. So when he passed away, when his wife passed away, he had to sell the house to be able to afford to put himself in a nursing home, because none of his kids were gonna pay for it, and none of his kids were gonna take him in. Something that this country has is that since they offer stuff like Social Security, Medicare, and all that, kids don't tend to think that they need to do much more for their parents. Since the government is already going to give them Medicare, give them monthly, they think that that's enough for their parents to survive on a basis. Parents know not to expect anything back from the money that they invested in their kids. Jean and his wife made sure to save up money throughout their entire life for when they retire, that they would have something to fall back into. They would have something to cover the expenses of a nursing home, or to cover the expenses of their medical stuff. Parents are interested in getting children. They get falls whenever they're in a nursing home. They don't care if their kids pay for their stuff. They don't care if their kids actually, are interested in having them come into their home, but they would prefer just to see their kids, like any other parent would, because they're their kids. And when Jean's wife passed away, he had a lot of disappointment. Well, his wife too had a lot of disappointment. At the end of their aging year, their kids did not step up to what they needed to. Whenever they found out that Jean's wife had cancer, they flew into town and to spend time with their mom, but the next day they were already out in town doing their own business, taking care of their own things, and not actually spending time with their mom. The most memorable experience that Jean had was when he asked his practicing son physician to transfer his facility if he could get her more help for the stomach cancer that she had developed, and his son refused to give his mom a better treatment. He refused to help his mom, so Jean had to sell the house in order to pay for nursing for when he retired and stuff like that. Now Gene all Gene wants from his grandchildren and his children is for them to come visit them more often. He still remembers all their birthdays, he still remembers the important dates revolving their life, but he doesn't all he wants is for them to remember him the way that he remembers them. But he's just there in a nursing home. He's forgotten. They don't come visit him. They don't call him often, which it's easier than a visit, but he still doesn't get that.
Hi, my name is Robert, and I'll be talking to you about the compromise and the universal. So, Gene and his wife have always took the side of their children and gave their children the benefit of the doubt, regardless of the situation. And no matter what happened, Gene and his wife did things that benefit their children and not necessarily them. Um, when it came to the inheritance, Gene insisted to their children that they keep their bonds as brother and sister together. Gene's children can be content with their minimal efforts to help out their parents because they feel as if they lived their parents' full life expectations because they're successful. And the irony of this is that the children consciously or not consciously view success as fulfilling parents' dreams to compensate for caring for them when they're older in the future. Now, in the universal, the number of children not being able to care for their parents in their later years is overwhelming. Examples of extreme situations include being homeless, drug addicts, the children are in prison, um, they have mental disabilities, or they have severed relationships with their parents, or are not on speaking terms, and the list continues, and so on and so forth. Now, in most cases, normal cases, children are able to take care of their parents and remain in regular contact with them. However, they don't. Um, so neither cultural mentality or social arrangement in postmodern conditions emphasize children to parent care. And finally, the law of social progress states that parents invest more in their children than the children do to them in later years.